From the infection that strips away your humanity in seconds to the realization that you might be the only person left in the world. Today, I'll be explaining every single fear in a zombie apocalypse. And one fear at the end will make you question whether zombies were ever the real threat. But first, we need to talk about the bite, because if you think infection is the scariest part, you haven't seen what comes after. The bite. That's what starts it. 1 second you're human, making plans, thinking about tomorrow. Next second there's broken skin, blood mixing, and a countdown clock nobody can see, but everyone knows is ticking. 28 days later showed us the rage virus turning people in seconds, eyes flooding red, humanity stripped away faster than you can scream. World War Z cranked it up with entire cities collapsing in 12 seconds flat, infected climbing over each other like army ants, building human pyramids to scale walls that were supposed to keep them out. Resident Evil gave us the T-Virus, a corporate bioweapon that didn't just kill you but rewrote your DNA, turned you into something that craved living flesh the way you used to crave coffee. The infection isn't just a plot device. It's the engine of every zombie story ever told. Because once that first person turns, the math gets ugly fast. 1 becomes 10, 10 becomes 100, and by the time anyone realizes what's happening, half the city is already gone. But here's the thing. If the infection spreads that fast, why do some survivors last months without ever getting bitten? Keep that question in mind, because the answer isn't what you think. The virus itself acts like nothing we've seen in real life, which is exactly why it terrifies us. Rabies takes weeks to show symptoms, giving you time to get treatment. Ebola kills fast, but needs direct contact with bodily fluids. The zombie virus combines the worst of both. Spreads like rabies, kills like Ebola, but then does something nature never figured out. It brings you back, not as you, but as something wearing your face, using your body like a stolen car. And 28 weeks later, they thought they'd found a cure. Quarantined the infected, rebuilt society in the safe zones. Then one immune carrier kissed her infected husband and the whole thing started over, proving that even immunity doesn't save you when love makes you stupid. The movies love showing that moment of transformation, the eyes changing, the skin going pale, the jaw going slack before it snaps shut on the nearest throat. Games like Resident Evil turned it into gameplay mechanics, giving you infection percentages, countdown timers, green herbs that somehow cure a virus that turns people into flesh-eating monsters. Marvel Zombies took it further, showed us what happens when superheroes catch it, watching Spider-Man and Captain America tear into civilians while cracking jokes about how good they taste. The transformation strips everything that made you human. Your memories fade, your personality dissolves, your ability to love or fear or hope just evaporates like steam. What's left is hunger, pure and simple, a biological imperative that overrides every other instinct. You don't sleep, you don't rest, you just hunt. And everyone you knew, everyone who loved you, now has to choose between killing you or joining you. That's the real horror of infection. Not the physical symptoms, but the existential erasure. You become a walking corpse piloted by base instincts, a puppet dancing on strings made of corrupted neurons and misfiring synapses. Now imagine you survived the bite. Imagine you're immune, like Alice in Resident Evil, like Robert Neville in I Am Legend. Sounds great, right? Wrong. Because now you're a lab rat, a test subject, a resource to be harvested. The scientists want your blood, the military wants to weaponize you, and the survivors want to know why you got lucky when their families didn't. Immunity in zombie fiction is never a gift. It's a curse wrapped in a different package. The hordes. You can handle 1 zombie. Maybe 2 if you've got a good weapon and some distance. But 50? 100? 1,000 pouring through the streets like a flood made of rotting meat and clicking teeth? World War Z built entire sequences around the physics of zombie pyramids, showing infected stacking on top of each other to climb walls that should have been impossible to scale. Dawn of the Dead remake trapped survivors in a mall while thousands of undead pressed against the glass, and you could watch the math happen in real time. Each one was slow, stupid, easy to avoid, but together they became a force of nature, a tsunami that didn't care about walls or weapons or how many bullets you had left. Left 4 Dead made it a game mechanic, throwing horde after horde at players until exhaustion set in and mistakes happened. Dead Rising put you in a mall with 72 hours to survive and more zombies than the engine could render, creating lag from sheer corpse density. The hordes don't think, don't plan, don't get tired. They just come. Noise attracts them. Gunfire becomes a dinner bell, and once they start following, they don't stop. They'll walk into fire, off cliffs, through barbed wire, over the bodies of other zombies, because pain doesn't register anymore, and self-preservation died with their frontal lobes. Night of the Living Dead proved you could barricade yourself in a farmhouse, but eventually the wood splinters and the nails pull out and there are just too many hands reaching through the gaps. The numbers game is unwinnable, you can't kill them all, and every body that drops makes the ones behind it step higher. But here's what nobody talks about. The hordes aren't random. They follow patterns, migrate like animals, respond to stimuli in ways that suggest some base intelligence still flickering in the reptile brain. Land of the Dead showed zombies learning to use tools, working together to cross water, developing rudimentary problem-solving skills. That changes everything, because if zombies can learn, can adapt, can remember, then every assumption about survival goes out the window. You can't outsmart something that's learning your tricks. The swarm tactics create psychological pressure that's almost worse than physical danger. You can fight an enemy you understand, predict movements, exploit weaknesses. But hordes don't have weaknesses beyond the individual. And killing individuals doesn't matter when there are thousands more behind them. The sound of shuffling feet multiplied by hundreds creates white noise that drowns out everything else. You can't hear your friends, can't communicate, can't think, just survive. And every second you survive makes you more tired, more likely to make the mistake that ends you. Train to Busan put survivors on a moving bullet train, thought speed would save them. But zombies don't care about physics. They threw themselves at the train, clung to the outside, found ways in through maintenance hatches and emergency exits. The movie proved that even going 200 miles per hour doesn't matter when the infection is already inside with you. Zombieland tried to make it funny. Set rules like cardio and double tap, but even comedy can't hide the math. You can be in the best shape of your life, have unlimited ammunition, follow every rule perfectly, and still get overwhelmed when the crowd gets too thick. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the hordes only exist because society collapsed. And society didn't collapse because of zombies. It collapsed because of what came next, the fall. 28 Days Later opens with a guy waking up in a hospital to find London empty. Not evacuated, not quarantined, just abandoned. Cars in the streets, belongings scattered. Every sign of human life except actual humans. That's what collapse looks like. Not explosions or battles, just silence where there should be noise. The government failed, the military got overwhelmed, and everyone who could run did run, leaving behind a ghost civilization. Dawn of the Dead trapped people in a mall full of supplies, and still they couldn't survive, because infrastructure requires infrastructure. The power grid needs workers, water treatment needs maintenance, food distribution needs trucks and drivers and fuel. Take away the people and it all stops working. 3 days without power, the food in fridges rots. 1 week without water pressure, disease spreads. 2 weeks without fuel, nobody can leave their neighborhoods. A month in, you're back to medieval living conditions with corpses walking around. The collapse happens faster in movies than it would in real life, but not by much. Project Zomboid simulates it day by day, showing water shutting off, electricity flickering out, radio broadcasts going silent. By day 10, you're alone with whatever supplies you could grab, and the zombies are the least of your problems. You need food, water, medicine, shelter, security, and every single system that used to provide those things is gone. No police to call, no hospitals to visit, no stores to shop at. Just you and whatever you can carry, trying to outlast everyone else doing the same thing. 28 weeks later showed the attempted rebuild. Military safe zones with rigid quarantines and biometric scanning. Looked good on paper, military precision and government funding creating islands of civilization in a sea of infected. Then one carrier got inside and the whole structure collapsed faster than it went up. Because you can't rebuild society when you don't trust your neighbors, when every stranger might be infected, when every cough or sneeze sends people reaching for weapons. The social contract that holds civilization together requires trust, and trust dies first in an apocalypse. Before we go any further, I have just released my merch store with a very exclusive limited edition early supporter bundle. Only the first 50 people will have access to this bundle, so get it quickly while you still can at hownottodie.store. Okay, back to the video. Shaun of the Dead played it for laughs, showed London continuing almost normally while zombies wandered around because people couldn't accept that everything had changed. The movie understood something smart, that humans are really good at denying reality when reality gets too uncomfortable. We'll step over bodies, make excuses for weird behavior, find rational explanations for the impossible, because accepting the truth means accepting that our entire way of life just ended. The collapse isn't just physical infrastructure, it's psychological. It's the moment when people realize the old rules don't apply anymore and new rules haven't formed yet. That gap, that space between order and chaos, that's where the real horror lives. But the collapse doesn't just take away safety, it reveals what people were all along. And that's when you realize zombies aren't the real threat. The living. Train to Busan locked people in train cars, showed them turning on each other before the zombies even arrived. The rich passengers barricaded themselves in first class, left everyone else to die. Justified it with logic that sounded reasonable until you realized it was just cowardice, dressed up as pragmatism. When zombies finally broke through, the rich died screaming just like everyone else, proving that money can't buy survival when the world ends. The movie understood that apocalypse doesn't change people, it just removes the social pressure that kept them acting human. Day of the Dead put survivors in an underground bunker with military and scientists, watched them tear each other apart over power and resources while zombies waited patiently outside. The military wanted control, the scientists wanted experiments, and everyone wanted the other group dead more than they wanted to escape. Land of the Dead showed society rebuilding with class warfare baked in. Rich people in towers, poor people in slums, and zombies learning to fight back against both. Zombieland introduced con artists, people using the apocalypse to scam other survivors. Because why would the end of the world stop grifters from grifting? Dead Island put rival factions on a resort island, everyone fighting over the same supplies, making alliances and breaking them as soon as convenience dictated. Marvel Zombies showed superheroes eating civilians while debating whether it was ethical, like they were discussing dinner plans instead of mass murder. The infected might have taken their morality, but the setup showed that even heroes were always one bad day from becoming monsters. Here's the thing about human threats. Zombies are predictable. They see you, they chase you, they try to eat you. Simple. But humans lie, manipulate, pretend to be friendly while planning to rob you, form alliances specifically to betray you later when you've outlived your usefulness. They'll share supplies until they run low, then kill you in your sleep for the last can of beans. They'll help you fight zombies, then shoot you in the back and take your weapons. They'll join your group, earn your trust, and sell you out to raiders for a better deal. The apocalypse doesn't create evil people. It just removes the consequences that kept evil people pretending to be good. Raiders, cannibals, warlords, cults, all of them pop up in zombie fiction because all of them would pop up in real collapse. The Road, zombie adjacent in themes, showed cannibals running farms where they raised people like livestock. World War Z mentioned human trafficking, slavery, nations nuking their own cities to stop spread. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies overlaid zombie apocalypse on Regency England social structures, showing that class warfare survives the end of the world. Because people don't just want to survive, they want to win, to have more than their neighbors, to rebuild hierarchy with themselves on top. Now, imagine surviving the zombies, surviving the collapse, surviving other humans, and still having to worry about where your next meal comes from, because the clock keeps ticking and hunger doesn't care about plot armor. Starvation. I Am Legend showed Will Smith alone in New York, hunting deer through abandoned streets, growing corn in broad daylight, because the canned goods in stores only last so long. A year, maybe 2 if you're smart about rationing. Then the supply runs out and you're farming or hunting or starving. Dawn of the Dead trapped people in a mall full of supplies, and they still worried about food, because even a mall runs out eventually. Dead Island gave players hunger meters, made you watch your character weaken as food got scarce, turned survival horror into resource management. You couldn't just kill zombies, you had to plan meals, ration water, decide whether fighting for that convenience store was worth the calories you'd burn getting there. Army of the Dead put survivors in a zombie-filled Las Vegas, running heists not for money, but for supplies, because cash doesn't matter when there's nothing to buy. Planet Terror showed people hoarding military rations, willing to kill for them, because when you're hungry enough, ethics become optional. The zombie apocalypse doesn't kill most people. Starvation does. Infection gets you fast. Hunger takes its time, weakens you day by day until you're too tired to run, too slow to fight, too broken to care. You make mistakes when you're hungry. You take risks you shouldn't. You trust people you'd normally avoid. And mistakes in a zombie apocalypse don't give second chances. The math is brutal. An adult needs 2,000 calories a day to maintain weight. More if you're running from zombies or building barricades or doing anything that isn't sitting still. Canned goods average maybe 400 calories per can. Do the math. You need 5 cans a day just to break even, 35 cans a week, 140 cans a month. That's per person. Now multiply by everyone in your group and subtract from the finite number of cans in your area. The timer starts the moment the apocalypse begins, and every day brings you closer to 0. Water's worse. 3 days without water and you're dead. No negotiation, no tough it out heroics, just dead. Movies don't focus on it because watching people drink isn't dramatic. But Dead Island made you watch your water supply, forced you to boil questionable sources, gave you dysentery if you drank wrong. Project Zomboid simulated rain collection, water purification, the constant anxiety of watching your reserves drain while hoping the pipes don't run completely dry. Because when the water stops, disease starts. Cholera, typhoid, dysentery, all the medieval killers make comebacks in post-apocalyptic settings. Zombies might be immortal, but you're still very mortal, and dehydration kills you faster than hunger. But physical needs are just the foundation. What really breaks people isn't empty stomachs, it's empty rooms. Isolation. Rec locked one woman in an apartment building, quarantined by authorities, slowly realizing nobody was coming to help. The camera never left her perspective, made you feel the walls closing in, the silence between zombie attacks somehow worse than the screaming during. Zombie 2 stranded survivors on an island, surrounded by water and undead, completely cut off from the mainland. No rescue, no backup, no hope of extraction. Just you and whoever else survived the initial outbreak, watching each other for signs of infection, wondering who would turn first. No More Room in Hell put players in scenarios where help wasn't coming, where extraction was impossible, where the goal wasn't escape but just lasting one more day. The isolation breaks people differently than action does. You can fight zombies, shoot raiders, ration food, but you can't fight loneliness. I Am Legend showed Will Smith talking to mannequins, creating fake social interactions because 3 years alone broke his mind harder than the infected ever could. The human brain isn't wired for isolation. Needs social contact the way it needs food and water. Take it away long enough and things start breaking down. You hear voices, see movement and shadows, create elaborate fantasies where people are still alive. Gao, a body horror comic, isolated characters on infected shorelines. Watch them deteriorate mentally faster than physically. Project Zomboid added depression and panic mechanics. Made isolation a stat you had to manage like hunger. Stay alone too long and your character gets sad, moves slower, makes mistakes. Books stack up unread because you can't focus. Food tastes like nothing. You stop caring about survival because what's the point if you're the only one left? The games understood something movies often miss, that apocalypse survivors aren't just fighting external threats, they're fighting their own brains trying to give up. But isolation was just psychology. What comes next is where the genre started weaponizing human attachment itself, watching people destroy themselves over bonds that used to keep them human. Mercy killing. Shaun of the Dead forced the protagonist to shoot his infected mother, watched him hesitate, saw the moment when love became liability. She was already gone, the virus had already won, but she wore his mother's face, and that made the trigger impossible to pull. Until it wasn't, Train to Busan showed a father choosing between his daughter and other survivors, making moral calculations that had no right answers. Save your kid and doom everyone else, or sacrifice your kid and hate yourself forever. 28 weeks later opened with a man abandoning his infected wife, running while she screamed his name, living with that choice every day after. The movie made it clear he made the right tactical decision and the worst human one. The Last of Us built entire gameplay around companion deaths. Watching Joel lose his daughter in the opening. Watching him harden into something that could survive but couldn't really live. Warm Bodies flipped it, showed zombies retaining memory fragments, suggested maybe the infected weren't completely gone. That made it worse, because now every kill came with the question of whether you just murdered someone who might have come back. The mercy-killing dilemma only exists because we care, because emotional attachment survived the apocalypse even when nothing else did. Zombies don't have that problem. They kill without hesitation, without guilt, without the psychological weight that makes survivors second-guess every trigger pull. The moral math gets impossible. Is it mercy to kill someone before they turn? Is it murder? Does their consent before infection count? Or do they deserve a chance to survive? What if there's a cure tomorrow? What if you kill them today and tomorrow someone finds the antidote? These questions don't have answers, just choices, and every choice haunts you regardless of outcome. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies played it straight. Elizabeth Bennet killing infected family members with the same cold efficiency she used for social maneuvering. Because in that world, hesitation meant death. But even she carried the weight. Even she wondered if there was another way. Now here's where zombie fiction gets philosophical. Because every fear we've covered so far assumes the threat is temporary, that eventually someone finds a cure, rebuilds society, returns things to normal. But what if there is no cure? What if this is forever? No hope. 28 weeks later showed the military trying to contain, trying to rebuild, trying to restore order. Then the infection spread to mainland Europe, and the movie ended with zombie hordes in Paris, suggesting global saturation was inevitable. The Omega Man put the last human in a world of infected, watching him slowly lose his mind trying to find meaning in survival when humanity was effectively extinct. Marvel Zombies showed superheroes eating the entire universe, literally consuming everything alive until nothing remained but infected gods floating through dead space. These stories don't offer false hope, don't suggest rescue is coming, don't pretend things will get better. They accept that this is the new normal, that the world ended and isn't coming back, that every day of survival is just delaying the inevitable. Urban Dead created a persistent online world where zombies and survivors fought endless stalemate. No winning conditions, no end states. just grinding attrition forever. The Walking Dead, Rise of the Governor novels followed brutal men building brutal societies because gentle people died fast in a world without hope. When there's no light at the end of the tunnel, when every sunrise is just another day of hunger and fear and violence, when everyone you meet is either dying or trying to kill you, what's the point? Philosophers call it existential dread. Zombie fiction calls it Tuesday. The cure question haunts every zombie story. Resident Evil teased antidotes, showed pharmaceutical companies working on solutions, suggested maybe science could reverse the damage. Then it pulled the rug out, revealed the cure was a lie, that mutation had progressed too far, that the infected were gone forever. The hope made it worse, gave survivors something to fight for, then crushed them when it turned out to be vapor. Because humans can handle a lot if they think it's temporary, can endure terrible things if they believe it ends eventually. Take away that belief, and people break. 28 Weeks Later named itself after the attempted reconstruction, suggesting that enough time had passed for society to regroup. But time doesn't cure zombie apocalypse, it just spreads it further. The infected don't get tired, don't get bored, don't give up. They just keep coming, and eventually numbers win. You can barricade yourself forever, but eventually supplies run out. You can fight forever, but eventually ammunition runs out. You can hope forever, but eventually that runs out too. Now imagine facing all of this, knowing it started from nothing. One lab accident, one bite, one mistake, and the entire species ends. That's the fear that underlies everything else. The outbreak, 28 days later, started with animal rights activists freeing infected chimps from a lab, not knowing what they were releasing. World War Z tracked Patient Zero to China, showed how cover-ups and bureaucracy let it spread globally before anyone took it seriously. Train to Busan opened mid-outbreak, showing news reports of riots and sickness, people dismissing it as exaggeration until zombies were literally sprinting down the train aisle. Zombie panic simulated the first hours when nobody knew what was happening, when hospitals were overwhelmed, when police couldn't explain why shooting victims in the chest didn't stop them. The outbreak fear is uncertainty fear. Not knowing what you're facing, not understanding the rules yet, making mistakes that seem reasonable until hindsight shows they were catastrophic. Resident Evil built lore around corporate cover-ups, showing Umbrella Corporation knew exactly what they'd created and let it spread anyway because profit mattered more than people. The games revealed memos, emails, diary entries from scientists who tried to warn leadership and got silenced. Real-world parallels are obvious. COVID-19 showed us how quickly disease spreads when people don't take it seriously, how bureaucracy slows response times, how misinformation kills as effectively as the virus. Zombie outbreak stories tap into that anxiety, that feeling of watching disaster approach while authorities dither and deny. The exponential growth is what makes it terrifying. One infected person at a football game can create 50 exposures before anyone realizes. Those 50 create 500, 500 create 5,000, and within 24 hours, the entire city is a hot zone. The math works against containment, because by the time symptoms show, spread has already happened. By the time hospitals identify the problem, it's already too late to stop. World War Z showed that explicitly, entire nations falling in weeks, because they couldn't admit the threat was real until it was already everywhere. The unknown rules compound the fear. Are they fast or slow? Does the infection spread through bites only, or through blood, saliva, scratches, airborne particles? How long until symptoms show? Is there an incubation period? Can you be asymptomatic and still contagious? Every zombie story answers these differently, and in the early outbreak, nobody knows which rules apply to their apocalypse. So people make guesses, take risks based on assumptions, and get infected because they guessed wrong. Night of the Living Dead established that everyone who dies becomes a zombie regardless of bite, but characters didn't know that. Hid corpses of loved ones, and got attacked when they reanimated. That single rule changed everything. Meant quarantine was impossible. Meant every death was a ticking time bomb. And underneath every outbreak story is the same question. Could it happen here? Could a lab accident actually create zombies? Could a virus actually reanimate the dead? Science says no, but science also said pandemic on the scale of COVID was unlikely, and look how that turned out. Rabies gives us aggression and hydrophobia. Toxoplasma gondii alters host behavior to benefit the parasite. Cordyceps fungus turns ants into zombies for real, hijacking their nervous systems and controlling their movements. Nature's already figured out how to create zombies, it just hasn't figured out how to do it to humans yet, keyword being yet. So you survive the outbreak, you avoid infection, outlast the hordes, endure the collapse, defend against raiders, scavenge food, handle isolation, make impossible choices, accept there's no cure, and watch civilization end. Congratulations, now comes the part nobody talks about. The slow realization that even if you survive everything else, you still have to survive yourself. because the human body wasn't designed for constant stress, and eventually something breaks. The long death, Project Zomboid added depression that could kill you as surely as zombies. Stay stressed long enough and your character gives up, stands still while zombies eat them, because the brain decided survival wasn't worth the effort anymore. The Last of Us showed survivors developing PTSD, jumping at sounds, seeing threats in shadows, unable to relax even in safe zones because safe zones never stay safe. Military rations and canned goods lack essential nutrients, give you enough calories to live, but not enough vitamins to thrive. 6 months on that diet and you're losing teeth to scurvy, bones weakening from vitamin D deficiency, immune system collapsing from malnutrition. A year in, and you're a walking medical crisis, kept alive by adrenaline and stubbornness, but not much else. The constant fear takes a toll. Nothing else matches. You sleep in shifts, wake up screaming, can't remember the last time you felt actually rested. Every noise might be zombies, every stranger might be raiders, every friendly face might be infected. That level of hypervigilance burns out your nervous system, floods your body with cortisol until your adrenal glands can't keep up. You start making mistakes, taking stupid risks, because part of your brain wants it to end. Not wants to die exactly, just wants to stop being afraid, and death is one way to accomplish that. The psychological damage compounds. You watch friends die, kill people who might have been good once, make choices that would have been unthinkable before. The weight of those decisions doesn't disappear just because they were necessary. Shaun of the Dead played it for comedy, but even that movie ended with survivors working dead-end jobs while zombies shuffled through the streets. Because even after winning, nobody really won. The world that came after wasn't worth saving, wasn't worth all the pain it took to reach it. Survivors in zombie fiction often seem disappointed they survived, like they expected something better than this. And this is what zombie apocalypse means. Not one big fear, but a cascade of fears, each one triggering the next, creating a horror environment where everything that can go wrong does go wrong, where every solution creates new problems, where survival is measured in days and hope is measured in lies you tell yourself. The infection starts it, the hordes spread it, the collapse enables it, the humans weaponize it, the starvation prolongs it, the isolation deepens it, the choices haunt it, the hopelessness defines it, the outbreak triggers it, and the long death ends it. That's the full cycle. The complete nightmare. Everything people fear most about zombie apocalypses distilled into one comprehensive vision of how the world ends, not with a bang, but with a bite. If you enjoyed this video and want to see most deserved deaths in zombie movies, click the video on the screen.